Welcome back to another episode 7 of Farewell Falling Nations. I am your guide, B. the Professor. As you know, this is a calamitous world we are living in, and things all around us seem to be shaking. Things seem to be coming undone, if you will. Societies and cultures are ripping at the fabric, and there seems to be so much that we have to talk about today. I am looking forward to getting into this episode. We've got a few strange things that we seem to be consumed with in the U.S. Celebrities are going wild. Celebrity worship is also at a high, as it typically is in the Western world, and it permeates through the international community. And two specific brothers have decided to get themselves in the headline. I don't want to talk too much about it, but it's interesting, isn't it? The whole Will Smith, Chris Rock thing. I don't have any unique takes that haven't already been expressed. There's so many people that are expressing opinions about what occurred. It was entertaining to watch, very shocking, but not really that shocking for me because I understand the nature of violence and I understand the nature of out of control emotions. When people are pressed on, they tend to react in a way that is unbecoming. So whether you like Will Smith or you think that he was wrong or not, or you like Chris Rock or you think that he was wrong or not, to me is irrelevant. I am more concerned with the way that we are enamored by the situation as if we've never seen somebody get slapped before. Maybe you haven't. Maybe that was the first for you. I've seen people get slapped. It seems to be always funny though, right? Like, the first reaction when you hear when you see someone get slapped is to say, "Oh, dang, they got the slapped out of them." And that's what Chris Rock said. I mean, literally the very first thing, that's what he said. It's like, Will Smith just slapped the out of me. Will Smith, he kind of like shimmied away, with this like stroll, like he was some sort of professional pimp, and sat back down in his seat and then began to yell out all the obscenities that he did in terms of defending his wife, and he felt justified in that moment, I guess. I do think that Chris Rock is kind of cool for not pressing charges, though, because, America is the nation of litigious people that sue for everything. Kind of like Colby Covington, who's an MMA fighter, decides to press charges against another man who he berated. There's a strange dynamic in this country, like this idea of sticks and stones may break my bones, but words will never hurt me. That's such an asinine concept. I don't know if you subscribe to that. That's always been something to me that I find within certain communities. This idea of sticks and stones may break my bones, but words will never hurt me. Do you believe that? I don't think that's true. I think that there's a whole lot of counseling professionals that will say otherwise. Damage and scars from words that are said. I think that the problem that I see is the celebrity worship. I think that Will Smith seemed like a man who's pressed on. He seems very overwhelmed. If you think about it, decades and decades of constantly being under scrutiny and being in the public eye and having people look at your life under a microscope, that's got to be exhausting, and it's got to be a breaking point, I would think. It sounds like he just snapped. I mean, he's tired of people in his business. We love to be in other people's business in this country. Love to constantly be nosing yourself and meddling in other people's business, even to the point to where you don't even see that that person is being destroyed by it. But you're just hungry for information that doesn't really pertain to you. If you see, interestingly enough, how people are responding to this situation, they can't even leave Chris Rock alone. Like the Boston show that he was at, it's sold out. I mean, people are paying above ticket prices waiting to see if he's going to talk about it, right? Don't you have things to do in your life? Like, is your life that insignificant that you're so consumed with Will Smith and Chris Rock and what they are doing in their lives? I don't really care about Will Smith and Jada Pinkett. I don't care about what's going on in their marriage. I don't care about their entanglements. It really has no bearing on my life whatsoever. It has no ability to dictate how I take care of my kids, how I take care of my spouse, how I eat, how I go about my day to day. It really has no bearing on anything. It's really none of my business. And the fact that we are so obsessed with being in their business is strange to me. That's what I find strange. Why are you so intrigued by what's going on with Will Smith and Chris Rock? Not just this situation, but in any situation. Celebrities in general, they're just people. They wake up in the morning, their breath stink, just like everybody else. They have to have bowel movements. They have issues. They have problems. Like, they're not special because they're being projected on a piece of technology. But we think that people are special because we see them on a screen. And what you saw is people that are broken, just like the rest of this country, broken down, out of control, emotionally out of control, loose lips. There's these adages like loose lips sink ships. And I go back to the sticks and stones one because I think about that with Chris Rock, right? Like people say, oh, it's just a joke. Sometimes jokes go too far. You never heard bad jokes? I mean, it's interestingly how we will say, well, okay, well, how do you determine which is a bad joke and which is a inappropriate joke or appropriate joke? Who dictates and determines these? What do we measure them off of? Because comedy and humor are subjective, are they not? One person likes Kevin Hart stand-up. Another person likes Joe Rogan stand-up. Another person likes Tyler Perry movies. Another person likes Jim Carrey movies. Another person likes George Carlin. Another person likes, what's the guy that smashes the melons? You know what I'm talking about? The guy, I forgot his name. Is that's a kind of humor, right? Some people like Chris Farley. Some people like Chris Tucker. Humor is subjective. If I say something super offensive and you say, well, it's just a joke, but it was super offensive, should I laugh at it even though I don't find it funny? Where's the line that we draw with these kinds of things? It's kind of interesting, right? Some people have really, really dark humor and they make very morbid jokes, very disgusting jokes. And there are audience of people that like those jokes, say, oh, those are just jokes. But when do jokes cross the line? When do jokes cause you to get your ass whooped? Because here's the thing. What I know is this. In certain communities within America, typically I will say non-Anglo communities, non-Western European descended communities, Black and Hispanic communities, sticks and stones may break your bones, but words will get your ass whooped. And that is a real reality. That's a reality. I think that is what you saw play on the Academy Award stage, is that there is sometimes when you talk too much and you get knocked in your mouth, there is a contingent of society that has no problem with that, especially within certain communities. But when you get on a national stage in a broader sense, there's this expectation that words and people can say whatever they want and you can say whatever you want. Really? You can say whatever you want? You shouldn't say whatever you want to anybody. Like, would you just run up to Mike Tyson and just start running your mouth and talking crazy to him? And if you got punched in the mouth and you got beat up by Mike Tyson because you were running your mouth, I don't think I feel bad for you because you brought that upon yourself. Like, you instigated violence against yourself because you were just completely unwise and arrogant and presumptuous in thinking that there's going to be no retaliatory action. Now, again, I'm not saying that to say that Chris Rock deserved to get slapped on national television. But I do think that there's some things going on there. I think that Will Smith seems to me like a tired man. He just needs to go probably just stop being in the public eye because the scrutiny and the constant criticism and critique and analysis of his situation and what his wife is doing and how she's looking and who she's with and all that is getting completely old. It seems like he's in his 50s now. He's been in the public eye since he was like a teenager, right? Decades and decades of constantly having to be on, quote unquote, on, and be this kind of person. And you saw just a man who got tired of listening to foolishness, or he got tired of dealing with his wife, which is very common. It's just like, listen, I don't want to have to go home and hear this woman's mouth, so I'm going to slap Chris Rock because I would rather have the whole world mad at me than to go home and listen to this woman's mouth because she saw me laughing at this joke. That's a real thing. Any of you who are married or have significant others that you live with know that it is better to sleep on the roof than to be in the house with a quarrelsome wife. And that is a fact. Maybe that's what was going through his mind. He looked over and saw her face and was like, oh, man, if I don't do something right now, like very bold, I'm going to have to go home and listen to her. And that is worse than listening to tabloids and news stations and everyone else talk about me. At this point in time, I just want peace in my house. So let me go slap Chris Rock. I'll apologize to this dude later. Anyway, so those are my thoughts on it. I think that there's a lot of different dynamics. I think that we're obsessed with celebrities. Stop it. They're just people. They die like everybody else. They're not special because they're on television. They have depression, anxiety, drug addiction. They have all kinds of issues and flaws. They are not special. They're just humans. That's it. Basic humans like everybody else. They just do some things that make you laugh or make you cry. They're entertaining. But, I got cousins that are entertaining too. And they're not on TV. I can be entertained by lots of people and lots of things. I don't have to worship them. I don't have to be enamored by them. I don't have to be in their business. I don't have to like wonder who they're dating and when they're going to break up and who they're seeing next, and all that stuff is irrelevant. If you got you some business of your own, you wouldn't be so enamored with other people's business who have no relevance in your life at all whatsoever. That's one aspect of it, the celebrity worship. The other one is people are just, that are celebrities, at some point in time, I would think they would just get tired of constantly people just watching them all the time. And then you saw, lastly, a man who was very much expressing himself out of control because of what's going on in his life. You could just see that. And then, okay, really lastly, should I say, is that you have a comedian who's joking about something that maybe he shouldn't have joked about. He should just let that one pass. You should just let that one roll. Especially knowing, if you truly are quote unquote a friend, you should have an understanding of what this man's going through and what his wife's going through. So you just kind of just keep it moving. It is what it is. Y'all be thinking about and talking about the next dramatic thing that happens next week. And this will be water under the bridge and no one will ever remember it until you decide that you want to cancel somebody and bring up an old article from 10 years ago. Let's move on. I want to go to another thing that continues to be an ongoing controversial topic. But before I do that, let me remind you that you have the opportunity to be a subscriber. I would like that because then I could make videos. I could do other things. Right now, I'm coming out of pocket for this experience that I'm giving you. This is a unique experience. I am, some would say, the Black Russell Brand, if you will. But no, in all seriousness, though, if you feel compelled to contribute, please do. Subscribe, follow, comment, go on Spotify, rate, go on Apple Music and rate, go to YouTube, comment, share the content with people that you know. If you feel that the commentary is insightful and it's useful and beneficial, then please be a part of this conversation. Don't just listen, but engage. I'd love to see the comments. I'd love to hear the interactions and see what your thoughts are on some of these topics. I will respond to you. Let's talk about something very controversial. I think that everyone knows at this point in time the individual that goes by Leah Thomas. And I've said on this show that the LGBTQIA plus movement is very bothersome and concerning. And I read albeit an opinion piece from NBC News. I found it appalling because I've said again on this show that this community of individuals is trying to liken themselves to black people. And as an Afro-descended male, that's extremely disturbing and annoying because you don't come out of the womb a homosexual. That's something that you choose. I came out of the womb and my DNA said African descent. I am ethnically African. People that are homosexual are not ethnically identified when they come out of the womb. The fact that they are trying to kind of like juxtapose themselves in some kind of way with, the black civil rights movement is completely disturbing and frustrating and annoying. And they're doing this, creating these kinds of platitudes in comparisons. And they continue. I read this article. This article was very, very disturbing to me. I'm going to be honest. I couldn't believe that I read it. It was very much comparing Leah Thompson to Jackie Robinson. This is a real thing, guys. The article reads like this. Leah Thompson's NCAA championship performance gives women's sports a crucial opportunity. And it said that this particular individual is that we should look at Leah Thompson like we do Jackie Robinson. Let that settle in for a second. Leah Thompson, a failure of a swimmer as a man, decides to, quote unquote, become a woman and goes and swims in women's competition and is beating women as a man. And I'm supposed to look at Leah Thompson like Jackie Robinson? Really? Jackie Robinson was discriminated against as a black man, denied from playing in leagues, spit on, called nigger, coon, all kinds of things, excluded from playing a game because of his ethnic identity as an Afro-descendant male. He was born that way. He did not choose to be of African descent. And this individual, who was born a man and lived as a man for the majority of this person's life, and was not a very good swimmer compared to other men. Okay, this is all fact and data. Was a very poor swimmer in comparison to other men. Decides that, okay, I'm going to level the playing field for myself by competing against women. And there are those out there that say, well, that's not a problem. There's no scientific evidence to say that testosterone gives a man a fair advantage. This is what people believe. I mean, literally, this particular individual, Cheryl Cookie, I call her Cheryl Kookie because she's bat crazy. She says those who oppose the inclusion of trans women, there's no such thing as a trans woman, in women's sports, trans women in women's sports, argue that trans women have an unfair competitive advantage and that as a result, they will take away opportunities from cisgender athletes. They make up terms. Cisgender is a, I'm not even going to go there. According to the NCAA, these assumptions are not well-founded. Really? Moreover, there's a lack of scientific evidence that conclusively demonstrates a direct link between testosterone and athletic performance. This is the kind of hogwash that people believe. It defies all logic and reason and common sense. If there is no difference between performance of a male and a female, then why not just have inner leagues? Why not just allow the WNBA and the NBA to merge and become one and have co-ed leagues? If there's no difference in performance, why do I never see a woman dunk a basketball? And when one does, for example, like a Brittany Griner, the whole world erupts because a woman dunked a basketball, because all the women are playing basketball. Why can't the majority of them dunk a basketball? Riddle me this. Cheryl Cookie, riddle me this. But when I watch the NBA, the Men's National Basketball Association, I see dunks every single game. Literally every game, several times a game. You'll be lucky if you see a woman dunk one time in 10 years at any level. I see high school kids, middle school kids dunking basketballs, black kids at like 12, 13 years old dunking basketballs in high school gyms. Why don't I see women at the professional level? They do like layup lines. They can barely get to the rim. There's no difference in men and women? Really? I played a co-ed sport one time, and let's just say it was soccer, because it was. Right? No need to be cheeky about it. And I didn't know the co-ed rules. You know, I was invited to play. I said, oh, yeah, I want to play. This sounds like fun. I play a lot of soccer. So I go onto the field. I didn't know the rules. You know, I was being inclusive in the way that I was approaching it, because I was like, well, everybody on the field can get it. They can get done in. And so I got the ball passed to me, and I proceeded to dribble down the field. I juked one chick. I juked a guy. I juked another chick, went around her, and then blasted a ball into the goal. And I was impressed with myself. Well, everyone else standed and watched me and said, you can't do that. I said, what do you mean? You're not allowed to do that. Men can't shoot inside the box. So if you have no knowledge of soccer, right, you have the goal, you have the goalie, you have the box area, which is, I don't know how many, what the dimensions of that area, okay? But once you enter the box, that is your highest probability of scoring. And you are going to try to attempt a shot on goal so you can score. Well, I did like 3 people in. 2 of them were women. And I proceeded to rip a shot on goal from inside the box because I earned that position like you do in soccer. But the goal didn't count. You know why? Because in co-ed, men cannot shoot inside the box. You have to pass to a woman, and the woman can shoot inside the box. Or if you want to shoot, you have to shoot from outside the box. Well, a shot from outside of the box is a lower probability shot. And why do you have to shoot from outside of the box? Because we want to make the game fair. Why does the game need to be fair? Because I easily juked 2 women without even thinking about it, who were comparatively against the other women that they were playing with on my team and on their own team equal in terms of skill set and ability. Not a single female was able to run past me in any way, from a speed standpoint, from a strength standpoint. Now, their skills were good, but in all fairness, I let up because it was a woman and because I knew that I could dominate her at my equal skill level. If you take a man and a woman at their profession at equal skill level, athletic event, the man is going to dominate. Why? Because men are stronger, faster, quicker. Why don't we just test women and men's 40 times Put them side by side. Why don't we test women and men's verticals? Put them side by side. If you watch a sporting event and you're observing, you can see a difference even in the pace and the speed of the game. It's very obvious and it's very clear. And I don't understand why this is such a difficult thing for people to see. What's more interesting about this, too, is that women are not okay with this. The women that are competing against the man who calls himself Leah Thompson are not okay. But they're afraid because of this wicked American cancel culture that tries to silence anyone with a dissenting perspective or view, doesn't allow them to speak up. And there was a young lady who competed against the Thomas individual and tied for 5th place. And this is interesting. Her name was Riley Gaines, and I got this from a Yahoo News article. It says Kentucky swimmer Riley Gaines, who tied with transgender swimmer Leah Thomas for 5th place in the 200-yard freestyle NCAA swimming championship, says the majority of females are not okay with the trajectory that female sports are taking. Gaines' remarks came during an interview on the Unmuted with Marsha podcast hosted by Senator Marsha Blackburn of Tennessee. She quotes, "The majority of us female athletes, or females in general really, are not okay with this. And they're not okay with the trajectory of this and how that it is going and how it could end up in a few years." This is sad that women, there's irony in this, isn't there? Like women who have for years fought for women's rights and equal pay for work and all of these different kinds of things, right? And to be included in a discussion and seen as equals and to have representation in society and have their sports and their athletic events and activities be given equal press and publicity as men's events and sports, right? And you see that within the women's national team soccer team. Equal coverage, the NCAA women's equal coverage, right? They want this representation. The irony of a man now going into a woman's space and then dominating the woman's space and then saying, "Oh no, I'm a woman." You can't make this up. I feel sorry for women. They can't win for losing. You know, again, these arguments, I find them so asinine. I mean, how can you make these statements that there's no scientific evidence that says, like, do we need to put testosterone under a test tube or whatever else? We need to, do you not see with your own eyes? Everyone knows this. Everyone sees it. You know, I think we should make a test. Why don't we let LeBron James play in the WNBA and see what happens? Let Diana Taurasi play in the NBA. Let's see how she does. 82-game season against men. Every single night she's gotten to battle against NBA athletes. Let's put LeBron James in the WNBA. See what happens. How many points a game do you think he scores? Is he win a championship every single year? Probably. You know why? Because it's not fair. Because women and men are not built the same. They're different. And women should have women's sports, and men should have men's sports. Men should not be going into women's sports pretending to be women and then competing against them and winning trophies and medals. It's wrong. And if you don't see that it's wrong, something's wrong with you. Something is seriously wrong with you. You're broken. You've been bamboozled and hoodwinked. And you've drank the Kool-Aid of LGBTQIA propaganda and cult-like thinking and misinformation and disinformation. And it's a problem. This is interesting. What they did to her, they didn't even give her medal. She looked up and she tied. She got 5th, okay, which is a medal position within swimming competition. I walked back to get my trophy, and the NCAA official came up to me. And he said, "Hey, that was a great swim. We only have one 5th place trophy," which I understood. She said, "I get how that works." But he said, "We're going to have to give the trophy to Leah." "Euros will be coming in the mail. Great job." She says, "I was kind of taken aback, and I don't think he necessarily expected me to really question it." Okay. She said, "I looked at him and said, this is the women's 200 freestyle. And Leah won a national title last night. And I have worked every day for the past 4 years for this." Wow. This is pathetic and embarrassing. The official from the NCAA takes the medal from the woman and gives it to the man. If that's not sexist, I don't know what is. How is this not sexist? A man comes in, competes in the women's competition, wins a medal, and the NCAA official says, "You don't get your medal. We're gonna mail you one in the mail. We're gonna give this to the man." She also said that the majority of women are afraid. She says she knows several women who feel the same way she does, but they're scared to speak out against transgender females participating in women's sports because of today's culture, and they don't want to risk their future. That is a shame that a man comes into their space, takes over their space, dominates the conversation, takes even the attention away from them. All the hard work they've done to compete against other women, wins medals in it, gets all the news and press and headline. And then they're afraid to speak out for fear of retribution. And they are the victims. Aren't we a nation that claims to protect women and women's rights? I thought that's what we were. Or who you are. I just live here. I pay my taxes. I obey the law of the land. And that's all I owe. But I don't resonate with any of this. I don't align myself with any of this foolishness. This is crazy. And people should be truly ashamed of this. The Leah Thompson, whatever this individual decides to call themselves. It doesn't even, if you look at this person, you can tell it's a man too as well. And there's been certain news outlets that have been guilty of like photoshopping this person's face to make them look more feminine. That's wrong, right? Well, why are you doing that? Because it looks like a man. That's why. The body type, everything looks like a man. And I believe that this individual still has penis. So for all intents and purposes, this is a man swimming in a pool with women. It's crazy. I wonder if this person gets dressed. I mean, I want to go and like pretend that I'm, a female soccer player and go to the dressing room and just hang out, Maybe I should do that. It's just crazy. I don't know how this happens in this country. I guess I do know because this is a falling nation. The culture is breaking, cracking. Can you see it? Look around you. Let's move on. Let's talk about some other things. I want to go to another aspect of culture. And, the Russia-Ukraine thing just keeps getting better. If you listen to Russell Brand, he talks about a lot of things that, are happening from a nefarious nation-state standpoint with all these bad actors, and which is not new news. I'm glad that Russell has the courage to talk about it. One thing that I thought was funny, because the business aspect of this, right, the whole economic implications of all of these different things that are occurring with the whole Russia-Ukraine crisis. One of the things that I saw was an article from CNN talking about Russian franchises. Have you guys seen this? So all of these businesses, American businesses, Burger King and McDonald's and Papa John's and the different businesses, they do, franchise deals, right? They want to put their poison in other countries. They want to put their fattening, nasty, bad food in other places because, Americans just can't hog all the diabetes and constipation. You got to, spread the love, right? But I don't know if you guys have heard this. There are businesses like everyone else that wants to cancel everything Russian that it can. You can't eat anything Russian. Can't go to a Russian restaurant anymore. Can't drink vodka. Apparently, I've got to protest everything Russian because that's the cool thing to do. It's the American thing to do. They have tried to stop business operations. A lot of companies, American-based companies in Russia. So they're trying to close down the Subways and the Burger Kings and the Papa John's and the McDonald's of the world. All these fast food things that have Western influence, but they haven't been able to do it with a lot of them because they're franchises. This is hilarious, guys. The article that I have from CNN Business is how Burger King and Papa John's are struggling to close all their Russian restaurants. The Russian franchise owners have refused. So the companies have withdrew their support, right? So they're not making any money off of these franchise owners anymore. In some of these franchise agreements, some of the people that they have these agreements with, they have a monopoly on all the restaurants. They can't make them shut the restaurants down. They don't even have any legal ground to stand on to make them shut the restaurants, which is even funnier. It's even more ironic, and I love it. I think it's great. I'm so glad this is happening to these companies. They deserve it. Take, for example, Burger King. This article says, Restaurant Brands International says it has pulled corporate support from the roughly 800 Burger King locations in Russia, but it can't force those locations to close. That's because they aren't operated by the company. Instead, they're controlled by an operator who, according to RBI, has refused to close the restaurants. This is phenomenal. Emotional decisions, rushing to judgments to please a culture that is sensitive and fickle and weak-minded. You are now suffering from an economic standpoint. Good for you. I've got to rush. I got to make sure that people look at us favorably. So let me go and do this emotional thing. So I can get with the wave and the flavor of the day because I'm afraid to be canceled. So now let me go against my business contracts and agreements in against good business fiscal sense and do something stupid so that I can please a generation of individuals with their little Twitter fingers because I don't want to get bad PR. And I'm afraid of my profit margins shrinking. Or not my margins shrinking, but I'm afraid of my profit decreasing in general. Sales, profit. But the irony, again, is by the very nature of doing that, you have now created a situation where your sales and profits are decreasing. Some of these franchise owners have like hundreds of stores in Russia, and they're still operating, which means that apparently the U.S. corporate, they've decided to not make any money off of it, and they're withdrawing any kind of support, but yet the operations of the companies in Russia are still moving. The franchise owners have all of the recipes. They have all of the ability to continue operations, and they're not going to shut down the food for their own people because Putin decided that he wanted to go wage a war any more than the U.S. shuts down its restaurants and corporations shut down stateside restaurants when America wants to go wage a war in brown-skinned countries like Iraq or Afghanistan and call them peacekeeping missions, quote unquote. The hypocrisy is so funny to me, and I think that it's good this is happening. Listen to this. I'm going to keep going. This is from a Papa John spokesperson. We do not own any assets or have any employees in Russia. Adding that Papa John's is not currently earning any income from Russia. That being said, we cannot unilaterally cause the independent franchises that operate there to stop operations. The franchise operator did not immediately respond to an inquiry for the story. And why would he? He doesn't owe America an explanation. My country is already in a situation to where we are the world's pariah. Now I'm going to stop giving my people creature comforts. Like they can't get a burger now. Like, really? No. F off, American company. We're going to keep running operations and we're going to keep making money. And I'm employing all these people. I'm not about to have my people lose their jobs. I'm not shutting down so that you can look good for weak-minded, finicky little Americans. This is an interesting thing. Listen to this. There are no legal clauses that allow us to unilaterally change the contract or allow any one of the partners to simply walk away or overturn the entire agreement. No serious investor in any industry in the world would agree to a long-term business relationship with flimsy termination clauses. This is exactly why we say it's a complicated legal process when we are asked why we can't just unilaterally shut down businesses. Okay, this came from Danielle Weinerbronner from CNN Business, this article. Okay, you can look at it if you want to. But this is interesting. Okay, look, think about the dynamics of this. Good business means you have good contracts. And if I am going to enter into business with you, I'm going to put clauses and things that protect me from your stupidity. Thankfully, the franchise owners that own these Russian restaurants or American-based restaurants in Russia had tight contracts. Because the American corporations that are making emotional decisions so that they can please American culture and society, they are protected against that asinine foolishness and simple-mindedness. They're protected. And the American companies are suffering, as they should. They deserve to suffer. I love this. I love that this is happening. I really do. I really am entertained by this. I don't know what your thoughts are on it. I'm pretty sure, like a lot of you, maybe know those that listen to this, the few that are listening right now. Maybe you agree with me. Perhaps you don't. Maybe you're some sort of American nationalist and you just believe that everything America does is right. Every decision America makes is right. Can't ever be wrong. It's always right. I certainly don't believe that. I think that nation states are leading people astray and corporations are doing things that make no sense. That was one story that I heard. I want to keep it moving. I went through a couple of these pretty fast today. I'm going to have time for another gem, guys. I've been doing a lot of, American kind of politics and society and culture, and I've done some international. The international has been mostly Russia, Ukraine, but I've got a story. It's a little unique. You probably haven't heard it, but I'm going to give you a different take on it. But before that, though, I'll remind you, please contribute to the show. Support, comment, follow, subscribe, share. These things are important to continue the dialogue in the discourse and to resist what we see, things that are not proper from any kind of sound worldview. I mean, I guess if you have a flawed way of thinking, you would think these things are okay, but I can't just sit here and act like they are. I want to give a shout out, though, to some of my listeners. I've seen listeners from different parts of the world, guys. I'm very, very satisfied with that. This is cool to see people in Australia. Shout out to the Australian listener, whoever you are. I'd love to know who you are. I'd love for you to like comment or something, or go to the YouTube, leave a comment, go to one of the platforms, leave a comment. But shout out to Southern Australia, who's rocking with Farewell Fallen Nations. I appreciate you. There's some other places I saw. Got some loyalty in Texas. Thank you for that. Thank you for the Texas base fan base. Cali, Georgia, Florida, and Missouri. So, those of you that are listening to these parts, it looks like we're going to kind of spreading the word around. So those of you that are listening to these places, please do share, like, and if you have people in your circle, and I'm pretty sure this is not the kind of content you want to blast to everybody in your circle, because you're gonna feel like they're gonna want to cancel you. But those that would benefit, and they feel like, hey, I feel alone in some of my ideas and my thoughts and I can't express them, share the content. Don't just keep it for yourself, okay? Be a giver. Be a giver of the content, so that we can have more of this spread. We need more of these kinds of voices. I don't say a lot of things that are completely different than like Russell Brand and even Joe Rogan, right? Now, for me, they are a lot more liberal in their perspectives of society and culture than I am. I try to be balanced with all things, and I try to also match things against divine principle, because I think that this world that we live in exists outside of we are in this space-time continuum, if you will, right? We're stuck in space and time here on this strange rock, but there are worlds and entities outside of this one. There are realms of existence outside of the physical, tangible realm that we can understand with our 5 empirical senses, if you will. And there is a consequence and repercussions of actions. Therefore, you have to measure the behavior and the beliefs against something that's higher than the beliefs of man. There has to be a guiding principle that's higher than just opinion. Because if all there is opinion, then who is right and who's wrong? So that's where I probably differ from Joe Rogan, where he's kind of agnostic in his thinking. Russell's very spiritual, but doesn't necessarily have what's the word I'm looking for? He doesn't subscribe necessarily to a Judeo-Christian worldview, whereas my worldview is going to be more so aligned with what you would consider Judeo-Christian in that regard, because I talk about Yahweh, I talk about divine principles of the Most High God, whereas Russell Brand is very much, spiritual and being awakened, enlightened in that way. So, he's got some kind of Eastern mysticism types of viewpoints mixed in with a Western intellectualism that he likes to combine. And listen, everyone has free will. You can do what you will with the time that you have been allotted. I don't think that I subscribe to either one of their beliefs spiritually, but nonetheless, I do enjoy their ability to take issues and be balanced with them and be contemplative and reflective and be critical, and not critical just for the sake of being critical. They don't talk about a lot of the LGBTQ stuff that I talk about, because they don't see that maybe as much of a problem as I do, because they tend to be more liberal in that side of things. But everyone has different perspectives and viewpoints. So, share the content with those that you feel will resonate with any part of it. And you know what? I don't care if you share it with people that it's gonna piss them off. I invite that, because if you listen to my content and you're upset, and it strikes a nerve, it's most likely because I'm poking at something that is true, and you just don't want to admit it. I've got a positive story that I want to get into, but before I do that, I'm going to talk about something that is spiritual in nature. It's kind of ironic to me. It's an international story, and it's rooted in North Africa, specifically in Egypt. And I read this, and maybe to you or to anyone, it would just kind of seem benign, like, oh, why is this something that you gravitated towards? But I read this in the Art newspaper. And the subject line of this article reads, Grand Egyptian Museum in Cairo, 99% ready as contractor promises theatrical Tutankhamun gallery. Egyptian government officials say the long-awaited Antiquities Museum near the pyramids of Giza will probably open in November this year. They are building this huge, I would say, museum for the Pharaohs in this time period where the Pharaohs reigned. You know what's ironic to me about this? I find it to be hypocritical. Why? Well, the last time I checked, is not Egypt a Muslim nation? And Muslims are supposed to do away with the infidel and the idolater, are they not? As a monotheistic religion, they should not be exalting anything other than Allah, correct? Allah is the most powerful and is the supreme. So how is it that you then can justify creating a memorial museum to idolatrous, wicked pagans? That's strange, isn't it? This is going to be a huge source of revenue and tourism, which means that would it not be that money is your God? You put God below monetary gain, because when I see, for example, a lot of, like when Al Qaeda or ISIS, the Islamic State, they go into a territory and they destroy pagan temples and idols temples. That seems more in line. Now, it draws the ire of the world community because they're historical sites, but they don't care because they are erecting temples to an unclean deity, right? So if you are monotheistic in your thinking and you go into a land and there's idol worship in the land and you've taken over that land, it would make logical sense for you to get rid of the things in that land that have been exalted to worship unclean deities and other gods, because you shall have no other gods before Allah, correct? The same with Israelites. When they went into a land, they were to get rid of the Asherah poles. They were to burn down anything and destroy anything that was erected to another god. When they went into Philistine territories, they did this. They destroyed everything that was erected. And if they didn't, then Yahweh God, they draw the ire of the Most High God, of Jehovah. But yet the Egyptians, though, who are predominantly Muslim, seem to be leaning into the idolatry and the pagan worship that existed in their lands. They're not actually trying to eradicate it at all. They're making quite a bit of money off it. It's also interesting to me that we, as a society, a global society, are infatuated with the Egyptians. We are infatuated with pagans. Think about this. The Egyptians worshipped all sorts of deities and were chiefs in divination and incantation and rituals and spells. A lot of the modern day esoteric knowledge that tries to get passed around, they go back and they try to channel entities and energies from this time period. They try to get knowledge from it, to use that knowledge and that information so that they can make themselves powerful and successful like the Egyptians were. So the knowledge they're using is knowledge that comes from a source, or else you wouldn't go through great lengths to try to go and acquire it if it wasn't worthwhile. Whether it's Aleister Crowley, the 33rd degree of Freemasons, and the like, who are infatuated with Mesopotamian time period, and they're infatuated with Baphomet and other types of deities that existed, or I would say still exist. But in the Western European world, we don't believe in God or spiritual entities or deities or any kinds of beings for that matter. We just believe in the self, in the humankind. So we go to Egypt and we look at these great things. That you're looking at pyramids were erected for the purpose of idolatry. You are marveling at a creation, a created thing that was meant to worship deities that you yourself don't believe in, but yet you're impressed with all that went into the works of their hands to build things that you don't even think are significant, but yet you are so impressed by them. And the Egyptians, to me, are very much hypocrites. How can you say you love Allah, but in the same time erect a monument to kings, pharaohs, and individuals who wanted nothing to do with the Most High? This is something that I want you to consider. It's just something I want to talk about. I think that it's interesting. I find it to be quite ironic, very hypocritical from my perspective. 50,000 square foot Tutankhamun. I mean, they've got all these. I mean, they just love, man. People love this time period. They're just so impressed by these pagan worshipers. Pagan worshiping, idol worshiping individuals, man. So we can talk about that more some other time too as well. I think that I wanted to just kind of like scratch the surface. I don't want to get too deep down into that. I find it interesting that we're so enamored by the Egyptians when they obviously were channeling knowledge from unclean entities. And maybe that's why we are attracted to it, because deep down inside, we don't want anything to do with the true and living God. We want idolatry. And so we resonate with the Egyptians because we want power and authority on the earth, and we want to build things on the earth. We want the earth to be our primary domain and only domain. That's why we are so gripped by death, because we can't imagine ourselves being in any other realm. So death stings. So we try to get as much as we can in this life, because we know that we don't have any hope past it. If you have no hope past this life, oh man, that's a hopeless state of being. I feel bad for you if that's where you are in your life. You may want to consider a different position. Let's end on a positive note, a positive story, as I like to do. I like to leave you with something that's fun and it shows the best of humanity, because we have to talk about those things too. I can't just ride all the time. I got to give you something to say, okay, well, there's hope in individuals. Again, as an Afro-descendant person, the police have not always been my most favorite people. I'm sure that a lot of people that are black will resonate with that statement. Those of you who don't resonate with that, then, too bad. It is what it is. This has never been a nation where it's been very friendly to black people. And that is our experiences. And, we're going to continue to pound the drum in that regard. But since I am a fair and balanced person, I like to talk about things that are good, because individuals can be good if they choose to. And I read this story about a city in Texas, a city called Plano. And this was very cool. It says Plano police, this is an NBC article, local NBC article, Local 5 News in Metroplex of Dallas. Plano police turned disturbance call into a pizza party. This is pretty cool, guys. Listen to this. What started as Plano police responding to a neighborhood disturbance ended with an impromptu soccer game and a pizza party. The complainant called. This is Karen alert, y'all. Karen alert here. Thankfully, the police, okay, because it was probably, I guarantee you, and I think it was like Hispanic and black kids, probably outside playing. Because if you just when you listen to what the story is, you're going to hear it like, yeah, anyway. Okay, so the complainant called and said kids were fighting on the basketball court, said Officer Henry Rogers. When I got there on the scene, it was quickly discovered they were just play boxing. They had boxing gloves and were just laughing. So some Karen calls, like, they're fighting. Gotta call the police. As opposed to you passive, aggressive, weak, cowardice Karen going out and talking to the kids, having a conversation as an adult, you go and call the police, because that's what we do in this cowardice nation. We can't confront anything. Passive, aggressive people, non-confrontational. You just call the police. Goodness grief. So pathetic. Anyway, back to the positivity. Rogers realized what he had on his hands was simply kids being kids, playing games, having a good time. He could have left it at that, but Rogers and another responding officer, Xavier Moreno, decided to join in on the fun. One of the kids challenged me to a basketball game, and he quickly beat me, Rogers said. The fun didn't end there. There were more games to be played. So when my partner here told me how they beat him so quickly, I was like, well, let's challenge them in a soccer game. We might have a better chance then, said Moreno. That turned into a friendly wager, and the loser had to buy the entire playground pizza. One of the neighbors' moms captured the moments on camera. One of the kids came inside like, Plano PD is playing soccer against the kids, and whoever loses has to buy pizza. And I was like, what? So I was like running outside, said Brianne Richardson. It turns out the kids got the best of Officers Richards and Moreno. They made good on their promise, and pizza was on them. It was so much fun, Richardson said. They just had a blast. The officers understand this experience can have a lasting impact. We want to build that rapport, so when they need us, they know they can trust us, Rogers said. They said that positive influence goes both ways. We respond to calls for service on people's worst days, and sometimes we don't see the good, said Moreno. So it was very refreshing to sit down for a little bit, relax, and just laugh a little with the kids. Doesn't that story just make you feel good inside? Especially all the stories we hear about police completely acting an ass and just wilding out, doing way too much, super hyper aggressive, can't control their emotions, doing extra stuff, being abusive, discriminatory, talking all out of pocket, talking crazy to people, which happens every day, predominantly to black people, but also to white people as well. I don't know how many videos I've seen of cops shooting white people in their houses. I saw one in Arizona. Cop shot this guy in his house, killed him. A lot of them are so scary. They're combative. It's like they're looking for a fight. But this is the kind of policing that we need, because police are there supposedly and supposed to be for the purpose of serving the city and its citizens, to protect and to serve people. But you can't do that if you hate the people you serve, if you dislike them, or you always assume that they're up to something, or you always assume that they're guilty before a court even accuses them of such, or convicts them, should I say. We need more police like this, Rogers and Moreno. So much applause to the Plano Police Department for whatever they're doing. I mean, I don't know if this is indicative across the whole department. I'm sure that it's not. I almost be willing to wager on it. But if it is, can we duplicate these kinds of interactions across the nation? Can we get more police that are not cowards and they're not afraid of people, and they're not quick to anger? They know how to have emotional self-control. They know how to come into a situation and diffuse one. They know how to come into a situation, and you don't have to arrest everyone every time. Like, okay, well, the person's got a speeding ticket warrant. Like, do I got to really take this person to jail because they have a ticket for not stopping at a stop sign? Like, that's not necessary. We have a lot of things to change and reform in that way in the United States. But a little bit more fellow feeling goes a long way. A little bit more understanding, a little more compassion, a little more grace. Wow, here's a concept. Grace. You give somebody grace. Even though you're in authority, you give them grace. In this situation, there was no wrongdoing. The cops didn't come and assume. They didn't assume that the complainant was right just because she called. As if you call the police and automatically that makes you the person that's in the right. Thankfully, they didn't do that. They assessed the situation like logical thinking human beings. And they didn't give any credence to the Karen who called in with her little Karen-esque behavior to ruin some kids that were simply just having fun and being teenagers. Thankfully, they're not out in the apartment complexes selling crack, because some teenagers in certain communities, that's what they're out doing. They're out the carrying pistols, doing whatever else in apartments, wilding out. But these kids were just hanging out, having a good time. Boxing a little bit. It's good to defend yourself. I like martial arts. Play boxing with the gloves. They're not out there really squabbling with fisticuffs. So that's good. That was the last one I wanted to give you guys. If you've enjoyed this, if you've enjoyed the conversation, support in any way that you feel the need to support or you feel led to support, please do so. Whether it's donating, whether it's being a contributor in that way, whether it's leaving a comment on the YouTube page or the Podbean page that we're on, or giving it a 5-star rating, leaving a review on Apple, which I would appreciate, sharing it with someone that you think would enjoy the content, or someone that perhaps maybe would be aggravated by it. Either way, this dialogue is always going to be challenging. I thank you for joining in. Thank you once again. Shout out to those from around the world and across the country that are tuning in to listen. This is B. the Professor. We are Farewell Falling Nations, and I'm out.